Okay, so today we are going to talk about how a character develops in a novel. So discussing characters in the novel you're reading. So you are going to complete this graphic organizer, which should be familiar. We've done these types of graphic organizers, right? Not this one particular, but we've done graphic organizers over our novels the past few times based on standards. Today we're talking about the standard 2. Standard 2 is analyze how a character develops. So we are analyzing how a character develops and changes throughout a story, because it happens in every single novel that you read. As the plot unfolds and as the problem gets discovered and then a solution comes about, we then see how the characters change in order to make that solution possible. All right? So recognizing the characters in your story, it can be the protagonist or the antagonist. There's all sorts of characters. Someone tell me, who is the protagonist of a story? Anybody know what the protagonist is?
Person that spices up the story.
Sort of. The protagonist is the main character, right? The main character. So yeah, they definitely bring some stuff to the story. They bring the story alive. They're the good guy. Pro is kind of like pros and cons. Pros are positive, right? So the protagonist is the good guy of the story. The protagonist is the main character that's the good guy. So if the protagonist is the pro, the positive, the good guy, what do you think the antagonist is?
The bad guy.
Yeah, the bad guy, right? The guy on the other side. So they're antagonizing the protagonist. The antagonist antagonizes, kind of like you guys that have siblings that antagonize you, right? Drive you crazy, okay? So protagonist and antagonist. So you can fill this out on any character, any of the main characters. Westingame, you guys have a ton of main characters. There's a ton of characters in that story. Little Women, I have all of the sisters that are main characters. Whereas stories like Bud Not Buddy, right, have a little bit fewer main characters. You have Bud, pretty much. Or Corner of the Universe, the main characters, yeah, you have some of the, like, the grandma and the mom and the dad, but they don't make an appearance nearly as much as what Hattie does or what Adam does, right? So those are going to be your main characters. So any character you choose, as long as it's one of the main characters that show up at the beginning or towards the beginning of the book and is in the entire story, is where we're going to use for this, okay? So let's use for our example, because it's one of the obvious, easier examples that we all know from A Christmas Carol, right? Who is the main character in A Christmas Carol? Everybody. Scrooge, right? Scrooge was the main character. So I am just going to put up here who my main character that I'm talking about is. So in this case, it's Scrooge. So what is the conflict the character Scrooge faces? So remember, we talked about all sorts of conflicts when we talked about Christmas Carol. We talked about person versus person, person versus society, person versus the supernatural, right? Does that sound familiar to any of you? I believe in your reader's notebook, we wrote down the types of conflict. So if you need to go back and look in your reader's notebook so that you know those types of conflict, you can. But here we're not just going to put the type of conflict, but also what the conflict was. So Scrooge faces the conflict with himself, okay? Well, there's lots of conflict, but we're going to focus for this particular thing on self versus self. All right, the self versus self conflict. So he had conflict within himself, right? What was that conflict? Scrooge was unhappy and mean, wasn't he? Scrooge was mean. He was not nice. Okay? He didn't like anybody, did he? He had no no family.
And if someone wanted to be his friend, he would push him away.
Yeah, push people away. Also, he hated Christmas, didn't he? Right? It was a Christmas Carol. That's kind of the main conflict. He hated Christmas. So I'm just going to put a few different things there for that conflict. Him versus himself. All right? So then how does the character change?
He decides to put his feelings aside.
Yeah, so at the end, Scrooge embraces Christmas, doesn't he? He becomes
Jolly.
thankful for what he has. Because at the beginning, he's what? Remember we talked about those deadly sins? He's greedy, right? So what does this change mean? This right here is the theme. We spent time last week talking about theme, didn't we? And you guys were struggling a little bit with theme. So I believe I gave you a handout of all different types of theme, right? And then I told you to take a picture of the front and the back of that paper and to put it in your reading folder, in your drive. So go ahead and look at that paper or the pictures that you took where I gave you all the different types of theme. Because the theme, the author uses the characters, the author uses character change to give you theme. That's one way they show it to you. So when you're trying to figure out what the theme of something is, one way to figure that out is to analyze a character. How does the main character change? Because they're changing for a reason. The author makes them a certain way and has them experience certain things to tell you what the theme is. So in this case, right, in this case, it could be a few different themes, but I am going to go for putting family first, loving your family, right? That's my theme. My theme is going to be loving your family, right? So the meaning of change is loving your family. Scrooge learns to love his family, okay? Meaning of change can be all different. Meaning of change could be thankful for what you have. The meaning of the change, whatever it is. But this is the meaning of the change is kind of the author's message to you. Does that make sense? Okay? So you are going to use the characters from your story. Some of you are not done with your book yet. That's okay, because your character still has changed. Most of you are over half, well, if you're doing what you're supposed to, you are definitely over halfway done with your book, which means you can easily know how they're changing. You can see how they're changing. Scrooge changes after he sees the ghost of Christmas past. And then he changes again after the ghost of Christmas present. And then he changes even more after the ghost of Christmas future, right? So your character is constantly changing throughout the story. So it's okay if you're not done with your book yet. Your character has still went through changes. So you need to identify your character from your story. What is the conflict they face? So in this case, I chose self for self, and then how kind of they were going through that conflict, okay? I will, make a copy of the slide of conflict and repost it for you guys in Canvas, so you can look at it if you didn't write it in your reader's notebook, or you can't find it, or you lost your reader's notebook, or whatever.
Did you have 4 or 6 types of conflict?
I have at least 6,
Person, nature, self, society, supernatural, technology?
yeah. So then, so like I said, I will post that slide in Canvas as a link for you guys to look at, or I will list them in Canvas for you guys as a reminder if you didn't put them in your reader's notebook. And then you write down what that conflict looks like, how the character changes, or how they are changing if you're not done with your story yet, and then why. What is the meaning of that change? Your story can have multiple themes. The theme can change of what you think halfway through the story to what you think at the end, right? So you are going to fill this out, analyzing your character, because this helps you with that theme idea that we're kind of struggling with. So you're gonna fill this out, this graphic organizer on your story, and then you're gonna upload it. So you should be able to get this done easily by the time you guys, time is up. It should take you maybe 15 minutes to do, okay? So you should get this done and submitted to me pretty easily, as soon as I activate it in Canvas for you, of course. So you could start thinking about who you wanna do, looking through your story, so that you're using details from the story. Don't just say, he was nice, she was nice, okay? Try to use details from the story, so that I also know that you've been reading. Yes? All right, any questions about this assignment? You guys good? Okay, just go ahead and start working, and I will get the Canvas